How's it going, YouTube? We're bringing you guys another Rulings video today. It is the EX3 Rulings video. Got a little behind on actually getting this out. Took a little time to get some product, wasn't able to get everything out, was a little busy, couldn't get it out on release date, unfortunately. But now I will try to get it out sooner than later. And I know for the people in the UK, I believe you guys had a delay, so it's going to be a little bit better for you guys. Maybe you guys can go over these rulings before the cards come out, so that way you're a little familiar. I am going to go over some of the erratas that are listed today. There are a whole bunch. I'm not going to do that. Those will probably, you can find them on the Digimon page and you can see all of the erratas. There are quite a few, but what I am going to go over are some key ones that are important, not some of the smaller ones, mainly some of the things like what is the spectrum of cards that some of the cards affect, such as the angels, the dragons, and stuff like that. I'll go over those as we get to it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the first set of rulings. All right, everyone, so as kind of a similar thing I've done in the past, we're going to go over color. I'm going to start, it's going to kind of be color, and then we're going to do the secrets at the end, just because I want to do it that way. So the first card we're going to go over, again, this is going to be over our erratas. This is going to be Doricmon. So currently what the card states is whenever you do its Digicross, and then based off of its on-play effect, it uses dragons. I'm not going to read out the whole effect. I'm going to have it on screen over that way, or that way probably. It goes over dragons, and while dragons in and of itself aren't, like, that wouldn't be the worst thing to go over, but it involves other things too. It involves dragons, ceratopsians, and Digimon with Soar. Now, I've had people ask me, what is the difference between those and where, like, Lord Nightmon needs specifically a warrior type. It doesn't have to have anything, it's warrior trait. This one doesn't have to be specifically warrior. It has to be dragon, ceratopsian, or soar in one of its traits. So this means you can use things like rock dragon, earth dragon, metal dragon, dragonkin. All of those are technically all legal targets for you to use for his Digicross, and then also get the DP deletion bonus from his on-play effect. This is one of the ones that you've seen, that like the Soar, Ceratopsian and stuff is mentioned on other cards. It missed out on Doricmon. Doricmon, I think, is the one you're going to see the most because it's used in the Dragon Link deck, and I also wanted to go over it because of, like I said, unlike the Lord Nightmon thing where it doesn't have to be specifically warrior for Lord Nightmon, or it does for Lord Nightmon, this one can include it in the traits. Dragonkin, Earth Dragon, Sky Dragon, so on and so forth. Alright, everyone, so the next card that we're going to go over is one that I've seen misreported a few times. It's going to be the Chaosdramon from EX3, the new one. So what we're worried about here is its when Digivolving and on-play effect, where you get to place 3 different cyborg Digimon from your trash or hand underneath its sources, and then you get to, for each one, de-Digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. So a lot of people have been kind of misconstruing that as you get to de-Digivolve a separate Digimon for each one that you place. That is actually not the case. What happens is you de-Digivolve one on one Digimon. So the effect is de-Digivolve 1, and you can only target one Digimon. So if you put 3 sources underneath Chaosdramon, you get to de-Digivolve one Digimon 3 times. It's the same ruling as Metal Impulse that I went over in BT9, where instead of being able to de-Digivolve multiple Digimon, you can only target one. Chaosdramon works the exact same way, so do not get that mixed up. Do not de-Digivolve a whole field of stuff. You only get to de-Digivolve one Digimon. Alrighty, so that's all I really had for red. I'm sure there's other things that are in red that you will see later on in the video that you may have questions about, such as the Imperiodramon line. Wait for that. But if there's any other questions, I feel like answering the Doricmon one and the Chaosdramon were really all I needed. But if you guys have anything else, be sure to leave it in the comments down below. Next, we're going to go over into the blue cards. The first one that we're going to go over here is going to be Aegisdramon. So Aegisdramon, really, the only thing we're worried about here, again, is basically what you get to play off of Aegisdramon's effect. So Aegisdramon says when Digivolving, you may play 1 blue level 3 Digimon card, or a Digimon card with Seadramon in its name, or aquatic in its traits. That is the change here. I have the errata list over here on the separate screen, that's why I'm turning away. It's Seadramon in its name, or aqua or sea animal in one of its traits. Again, aquatic has aqua in it, works because I think there are a few Digimon that have aquatic in them as their trait, but this does aqua or sea animal, so it gives you a bigger variety instead of just like, well, there's only a few cards that are just aqua or aquatic, but then you include aqua or sea animal, and it increases the vast amount of things that you can play with the Aegisdramon deck. But really, that's all I really had to go over for that. Let's go ahead into a couple of more of the effects for blue that I think most people are interested in. So, of course, one of the big things that came out in this deck was the EXAMON line, and with that we have the new keyword of Evade. So this here is Wingdramon. Wingdramon really is going to be one of those Digimon that we're not super worried about its actual effect. We're more so worried about the fact that it has Evade in its traits. So what is Evade? Evade is similar to similar to like a decoy thing, but it's on the own Digimon. So what I mean by that is what you do with Evade is when this Digimon would be deleted, it doesn't have to be by an effect, whereas like decoy needs an effect to delete it. When this Digimon would be deleted, you may suspend it to prevent that deletion. There are of course effects that pair with this where you can unsuspend it afterwards. I'll kind of go over those timings when we get into EXAMON later on, but that's just how Evade works if it would be deleted by an option card. Gaia Force, if it would be deleted by battle, with something that's bigger than it. Anything like that. Now, DP reduction, you can technically evade. So you can evade where you suspend whenever it's going to have its DP set to minus by 15k. You can evade to prevent the deletion by game mechanics. You will still get deleted by game mechanics, but say you have some effect that lets you trigger when you suspend a Digimon, yeah, you can do that. But really what we're worried about here is anytime it would be deleted by anything, game mechanics, effects, anything like that, you can evade. You can't evade stuff like D-Digivolve, so that still doesn't. Even if the end result of the card that D-Digivolves is deletion, you can't evade the D-Digivolve part. So just kind of know that. Next up, we're going to have, I already have him on the screen, we have Slayerdramon. So Slayerdramon has an interesting effect. For those of you that don't know Slayerdramon, what he says, I'm going to go over the post-errata one because it's really just the one that is worded a little bit better. Start of your opponent's main phase as its main effect and as the inheritable because it's supposed to pair well with EXAMON. By suspending one of your Digimon with Dramon or EXAMON in its name, your opponent attacks with one of their Digimon. This is the start of the opponent's main phase. So what happens here that a lot of people have asked me is what happens when two of them attack at the same time? So, or your opponent has two Digimon. So you have two on the field, your opponent has two Digimon. What happens here? So what happens here is assume, let's say you have a Digimon that has some when attacking effects on your opponent's side of the field. They raise up, start of your opponent's main phase. Both of the Slayerdramon trigger. So both would activate. You can choose to activate one of them in any order. Both of them trigger. You choose to go ahead and activate it. Now, one other thing to mention here, your opponent is the person who gets to choose the attacking Digimon. You don't get to say, oh, I want that specific Digimon to attack. If they have a level 5 that you want to go ahead and swing and die to a blocker or something like that, and they also have a level 3, they can choose the level 3 because their opponent chooses the attacking Digimon. A little bit more fair and balanced that way. But in that situation, they decided to attack with a level 3. Let's say it has some when attacking effect. The when attacking effect, of course, triggers because it's attacking. You'll resolve any of that. But before the attack can land, you still have a pending effect in the second Slayerdramon. So the second Slayerdramon is going to try to make one of your opponent's Digimon to attack. But in this situation, your opponent's already in the process of attacking. So since an attack is already occurring, this second Slayerdramon fails to activate. So in that situation, you wouldn't be able to attack, make them swing in and die to a security check or die to a blocker, and then make their second one attack. You have to finish the first attack, but all other pending activations have to go ahead and activate first. So in this situation, we would have two Slayerdramon, and only one would be able to activate properly because an attack is already going on. While we're on the topic of Slayerdramon, I've also had people ask me, what happens if my opponent has a suspended Digimon? So over there on their side of the field, they're going to have a suspended Ancient Kazemon, and they have an unsuspended, these are just random cards I have on my desk, and an unsuspended Agumon. Do they have to forcibly attack with the Agumon? The answer is no. It works the same way as like targeting a suspended Digimon that is already suspended, or for a suspend effect for like Mega Gargomon from BT3, you can go ahead and target as the opponent, you get to choose what Digimon attacks. You choose the suspended Ancient Kazemon. That Digimon can't attack, so the effect fails to activate properly. That doesn't mean that you can't choose it. You don't have to choose the Agumon. You can choose the Ancient Kazemon. You can choose the suspended Digimon, so you don't have to force your opponent to attack. That's just how Digimon rules work in this. You can target things that aren't affected technically, such as with the suspension thing. But that's how that works. Since your opponent gets to choose, they can choose which one attacks. So don't try to cheat your opponent and make them attack with a certain thing, and don't let your opponent cheat you and let them to get attacked. Not cheat, but not really know exactly how the effect works. Remember, the opponent gets to choose the attack even if the attack the attacker can't physically attack. Same thing with frozen Digimon. Alright, another card that we're going to go over is a card that I've seen people kind of confused on, but it goes back to an old card that I'll bring up. Probably won't put it on screen because it never sees play, but Sorai. So what Sorai does, for those of you that don't know, is an option card. Activate the security effect is the same as the main. You strip the top 4 sources. You don't de-digivolve the Digimon, strip the one. All the sources from underneath the top Digimon, so the source right underneath it, 4 of those down, you strip all of those sources. Then all of your opponent's Digimon without Digivolution cards cannot attack until the end of your opponent's turn. This is worded, and it works a little bit differently than, say, something like Korikakumon or Howling Memory Boost. So what happens with Korikakumon and Howling Memory Boost is you strip one of the sources, and then that specific Digimon cannot attack or block, or some of the other things like Innocence Blizzards. Those Digimon without sources cannot attack or block until the end of your opponent's next turn. So it strips the sources, then it targets those Digimon, and they're not allowed to attack or block. This is more kind of like a blanket effect. So another effect, it's like a global effect. Another effect would be the card I was referencing is Grace Cross Freezer from BT1. It's a card that never sees any play, and I can't even fully remember what the effect does, but it's similar to Sorai, where Digimon without sources cannot attack until your opponent's turn ends. So in this situation, if you hit this out of security, or you hard play this, strip all the sources underneath one of your opponent's Digimon, and then your opponent has a Digimon without sources. Let's say they have like an Agumon on field without sources, like this. And then what happens is they decide to go ahead and Digivolve that Agumon into a Greymon. This Greymon now has sources, it can attack. So works a little bit differently because unlike the other effects where you target it and you freeze that specific Digimon continuously to the end of your opponent's next turn, it just can't attack or block until the end of the next turn. This one only prevents your opponent from attacking with Digimon that don't have sources. So if you Digivolve around it, you get around it. Or Digivolve on top of it, you get around it. Alrighty, so that's really all I have for the blue right now. We'll go over a little bit more blue stuff later with the EXAMON technically. But into the only yellow card I really have, this is going to be just another broad spectrum one like the Dorvikmon one. This is going to be Patamon and any of the Digimon that reference Angel. So what Patamon says is reveal the top 4 cards of your deck and add a yellow card with Angel in its traits. As well as 4 Great Dragons, blah, 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 blah. We don't care about that. What it's supposed to say, and this is where it kind of gets confusing, is reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, add 1 yellow card with Angel, Cherub, Throne, Authority, Seraph, or Virtue, other than 3 Great Angels in one of its traits, and then the rest of the effect. So you have Angel, but then you also have Cherub, Throne, Authority, Seraph, and Virtue. Now, that is fine for all of those. So it can have, Holy Angel. That works. But if it says 3 Great Angels, that doesn't work. I think that this really comes from the fact of how the kanji works. It's the same thing with like the Dorvikmon and the Dragon. Technically, Dorvikmon isn't translated improperly, but it's anything that contains the kanji for Dragon is how Dorvikmon worked, which included all the other stuff. It's the same thing with Patamon. But from my understanding, anybody who knows Japanese can maybe get this a little bit better than me. For whatever reason, 3 Great Angels does not actually have the kanji for angel in it, I believe. I could be wrong, but it works the same way, whereas like the kanji that they use for angel and translated over is also included into those other 5 traits that I mentioned. So that's how this one works. That pretty much covers it for all the yellow stuff though. Alright guys, so for the only green card here we're worried about seeing, I have the Hydrassi, the Hydramon. Please, YouTube, don't copyright strike this video because of this alternate art. I'm sorry. But I had to show off the alternate art. The only thing I really have to go over here with Hydramon involves a memory blocker situation. So I'll have Hydramon's text up on screen. The main thing we have to go over is the when Digivolving, you get to suspend a Digimon. When all turns, when one of your opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, you are able to gain memory for all of your fairy, plant, or vegetation in their traits Digimon. And then at the end of the turn, you get to bottom deck a suspended Digimon. So all that kind of comes into play when, let's say, we have a memory blocker on our opponent's side of the field. So here we have the Hydramon. Our opponent has a Madoki Betamon. You decide to Digivolve into the Hydrassi. Hydrassi passes memory over to the opposite side, to your opponent's side, and then this triggers the when Digivolving effect, of course, to suspend you just choose to suspend a Digimon, you suspend Madoki Betamon. This will then trigger the all turns effect. Now, note, the all turns effect triggers before the end of turn happens. It is a newly triggered effect, and that newly triggered effect has to finish activating before you proceed to the end of turn trigger timing. So here is when you would gain the memory. So you have yet to trigger the end of turn effects. So you would attempt to gain the memory, but unfortunately Madoki Betamon, Terriermon, whatever you have is on the field. You in fact don't get to gain the memory. Then, now that all of our pending effects have finished activating, then you get to the end of turn. This then will have the Madoki Betamon go ahead and get yeeted to the bottom of the deck. But by this point, it's already done its job and prevented you from gaining the memory back because of how the timings in Digimon work. So just know that you can't Digivolve into the Drusy, suspend a memory blocker, and then yeet the memory blocker and then gain the memory. You have to do it this way. All right, and last but most definitely not least for the purple boys, is going to be the Imperial Dramon line. So what I'm kind of going to go over, I know a lot of people know how this works, but I've had people ask me to make sure it works, and it's going to involve another interaction. So what happens here with the Imperial Dramon line, for those of you that don't know, is they have a whole bunch of effects. Wormmon and Vmon are their two key parts, but then you also have like the effect of this Flame Dramon, which digivolves on top of a purple or red. It has the effect of you can digivolve from trash one of your level 4 purple Digimon on top of one of your other Digimon by paying its Digivolution cost. Yeah, you may digivolve one of your other Digimon into a level 4 purple card with free in its traits for its play cost from your trash. Or the other one is DNA Digivolving. So the combo here, for those of you that don't know, is you go ahead, you Digivolve into Flame Dramon, say you have your purple free and trash Shadramon. This then triggers Shadramon's second effect. All of this is happening before the end of turn, remember, because you have to finish activating all your pending effects. That's when you'll go ahead and you'll DNA Digivolve. Say we have the Pyodramon, so then you'll make the red on top of the purple, and then you'll Digivolve into the Pyodramon. Pyodramon's when DNA Digivolving effect happens, you get to play out a Dino Beamon from your trash, and it's at this point that you have entered the end of turn. So then that triggers the end of turn effect of either Shadramon or Flame Dramon, whichever one you choose. We're going to go ahead and choose, well, I guess it doesn't matter, we'll choose Flame Dramon. And Imperial Dramon Dragon mode is a purple-red, so now we have to do, it doesn't really matter which order you put in. Ease of access, we're going to slap the Dino B on top, and then Digivolve into the Imperial Dramon Dragon mode. This then gets to activate all of its effects, and then you can attack with Blitz, swing in, and Digivolve into Imperial Dramon Fighter mode. Before we get into another one of the combo parts, or a ruling that I actually had somebody ask me about, is what happens if you just hard Digivolve into this. Say you have like a Pyodramon, Dino Beamon's not there, and you just want to hard Digivolve into the Imperial Dramon because you need to get that damage off, you need to get whatever's going on. You can still Blitz. Don't think that the whole when Digivolving effect is mandatorily locked under the DNA Digivolving. You cannot do the deletion part where you get to, your opponent chooses one Digimon, all the other Digimon are deleted, but you can still Blitz. The Blitz part is still legal. It's the do X, then Y. The do X part, which would be the when Digivolving, or DNA Digivolving part, you cannot do, but you can still do the Y, which is then Blitz. So know that you can still Blitz even if you don't DNA Digivolve. The other question I had come up before we go ahead and show off this alt art that I pulled, shoutouts to my wife who actually pulled it, is let's say you do this whole combo. You have, you know, the initial setup right here, you got your Wormmon, you got your Flamemon, you have all these boys in hand, you have the Dino being trash, blah, 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 and your opponent has Death X on field. What happens here? It's end of turn. You start doing all of your shenanigans. So at this point, I guess we could have just been to this part here where we've DNA Digivolved into the Pyodramon, and then we've played out the Dino Beamon. It's at this point that you have entered the end of turn. This triggers two things, or I guess it technically triggers three things, but we're not going to worry about all three necessarily because one of them is going to go away. But it triggers the end of turn effects of your Flame Dramon and your Shadramon, and then it also triggers the end of your opponent's turn of Death X. So, but as turn player, you get to activate all of your effects first. So here, you would go ahead, DNA Digivolve your boys together into the Imperial Dramon Dragon mode. Dragon mode, of course, would then activate its effect from DNA Digivolving. Your opponent chooses to keep the Death X mon alive. Let's say since you can attack unsuspended Digimon with the effect of the Dino Beam, you use Blitz, you decide to go ahead and target the Death X as the point of your attack. You go ahead and Digivolve with the when attacking effect into the Imperial Dramon Fighter mode. You get to use its effect if you want to put the Imperial Dramon back to your hand, blah, 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 or to the bottom of the deck. But at this point, before the attack can actually land, I had somebody message me about this on Twitter, and also I believe it was Freezert on Discord. Shoutouts to you if you're watching. It's at this point, before your attack actually collides with the Death X, you have one other pending effect that is still needing to be activated. And you're like, but all my effects are either gone or finished. You still have the effect of Death X to finish activating. Your opponent does. And it's at this point where I assume, unless you have another small body on the field, this is your only stack. This is your lowest level Digimon. So then this will be deleted before the attack actually lands. It is unfortunate, but you have to resolve all pending effects before the attack can actually land, and you still have Death X pending at that start of end of turn. The only way to get away with all of the shenanigans is to go ahead and do it all before the end of turn. So you would make sure you have to have all the memory to do all the shenanigans. But I know it's kind of sucky that way, but them's the breaks sometimes. So it's at this point that the Imperialdramon would be deleted, and since it's in the trash and you have a Wormmon and a Vmon, you can go ahead and play them out. But really, that's the unfortunate part here. Both of these guys, or this whole stack, would be deleted before it actually tries to kill the Death X. So Death X be a busted card, guys. Busted card. Now the last card that we have that I have yet to go over is going to be EXAMON. I do not have a pretty alt art of EXAMON yet. It's coming. I will have one. But EXAMON has basically a whole lot of effects when you put the whole stack underneath him, because he gets all of the inherited effects of like the Slayerdramon, and he gets to slot a dude, he gets to do all that shenanigans. But the big thing that I've had people ask me is what happens with its all turns effect where it gets to unsuspend whenever it's suspended. So for those of you that don't know, EXAMON says when this Digimon becomes suspended, unsuspend it, and suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. One thing to note about this effect, it is not interruptive. So I had multiple people ask me, I'll try to get the cards up on screen. I didn't actually want to show the cards, there's no point if I can get them up on screen. Megadeth. Megadeth has the effect of security or on main. You get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon and then bounce a suspended Digimon. They were like, can you go ahead and unsuspend EXAMON? The question to that is no. I believe Primitive is the one who asked me that. The question to that is no, because you have to actually finish the effect of Megadeth before the effect of EXAMON unsuspends it. So by the time EXAMON would technically trigger when it gets suspended, but you have to, the trigger timing waits until after the option finishes resolving. So by the time the option finishes resolving, they've already targeted EXAMON and put it to the bottom of your deck. The same thing kind of happens with like Hydramon. I think Tay is the one who asked me for Hydramon on the Twitter thing. It's the same thing. It goes ahead and gets targeted. But unlike that, with the Hydramon is a much better example, because you'll go ahead and you'll have a Hydramon on your opponent's side of the field. They go ahead, you have your EXAMON, it gets suspended. Two things trigger here, assuming it's not the end of turn yet, like when you Digivolve. So it gets suspended, you activate the effect. The same thing with the Terriermon. It goes ahead and it'll gain the memory, and then of course before end of turn starts, you still have a pending effect of the EXAMON to go ahead and unsuspend itself. So by the time the end of turn actually triggers, then the Hydramon's effect will try to bottom deck a suspended Digimon. EXAMON is no longer suspended, so EXAMON gets to avoid that. I believe he also mentioned something about Grandis Soul, but Grandis Soul works in the same way, I believe, where it suspends something and then it bottom decks. If I am wrong, sorry, I'll re-record this part. But if this part is still in just as it is, then you'll know it works pretty much the same way, because of how the suspension works, that it gets around a few things, and it doesn't get around other things. It gets around Hydramon, it doesn't get around effects that suspend and then bottom deck the suspended thing. So just know that the effect really isn't interruptive, and I guess the other thing that kind of pairs with EXAMON is going to be with the Slayerdramon stuff. So, but with like double Slayerdramon, since you're going to play out. But if you just refer back to like the double of the Slayerdramon effect, then that gets you covered for all this. But I've rambled on long enough, but that's pretty much all that I have for you guys. Let's go ahead and get to the outro. All right, everyone. So that's really, like I said, all I have for you today. It ended up being a little bit longer than I wanted to be. It might be about 30 minutes. If it's not, then I may have cut out a few rulings or two, something like that. But really, EX sets are pretty small, and unlike something with EX2, which had a whole bunch of new interesting things to go over with, mainly for like the D Reaper stuff, this set just, it introduces Evade, and it introduces a lot of erratas, but none of the real big mechanics other than like some of the EXAMON stuff is super crazy. The only real interaction I had to go over, which hopefully didn't like overwhelm you guys with the explanation because I didn't cut it up, was the EXAMON ruling with the Death Exon field. But outside of that, it really wasn't anything crazy. EX sets tend to be a little bit smaller. They don't introduce a whole lot of new mechanics usually, so we don't really go over a lot of new stuff and complex interactions. I'm sure I missed things. I'm sure people are going to find out. There are some things I'm like, oh yeah, this is the thing that is pretty straightforward, and then somebody comes to me with some complex ass situation, and they're like, hey, what happens here? And it's like, hold on. So if you guys have any questions like that, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. If there's still, like I said, a whole bunch that I think I need to go over and really, or like a similar question that keeps on popping up a lot, maybe I'll make another video out of it in the future. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for being patient for this video. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If you did enjoy the content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, hit the notification bell so you know when my videos go live, and leave any comments down below about any ruling questions I may be able to get back to you about that I didn't answer in today's video. With all that being said, oh, actually, I think we hit 2,000 subscribers, which is insane to me. I thank you guys so much for 2,000 subscribers. I wish I could upload more regularly to give you guys all the content that you deserve, but unfortunately I don't always have the time. But I will try to get these out a little bit more. Hopefully I'm be able to go back to locals, record some more games. But enough rambling. Thank you guys again for 2,000 subscribers so very much. And until next time, guys, catch you in the next one.